Hey, what's going on, guys? Greg Helbeck here. Welcome back to the show. Today I have one of my good buddies, Chris Salazar from good old Chicago. So, Chris, how you doing today, man?
Hey man, doing well. Thanks for having me on. I'm pumped to be here.
Awesome, man. Well, glad you're able to come on. So let's kind of start off with kind of your intro, your background, and how you got started in real estate.
Yeah, so I guess back in college. So I'm 24 years old. Back in 2014, I picked up my first real estate book. So the story is, all my friends were on spring break my sophomore year. I didn't have any money to go, and so I was like, you know what, I need to do something. I need to get off my ass. I went to the bookstore, picked up two books. One of them was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Luckily, I picked that book, and it kind of shifted my mindset. The idea was to save money. That was my mindset at the time, save money. I'm going to go study accounting and finance in school, get a really good job and eventually become a partner of a CPA firm, which is, a good goal for some people. But for me, I realized pretty quickly throughout college that I couldn't work wouldn't be a really good employee. I wasn't, I didn't have that type of follow the leader mindset. I wanted to make my own rules, and, I wanted to create a company and really experience fulfillment in life rather than just kind of working up the corporate ladder and doing all that shit. So for the most part, starting out, I was really, this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, completely shifted my mindset on building your asset column. Just taught me about investing in general, and it talked a lot about real estate. So, real estate has always been intriguing to me. You grow up watching the house flipping shows or whatever. So I started with the easiest barrier to entry business, which is wholesaling. So I did that and had a good experience with that. Had, a lot of tough times, dealt with a lot of rejection, a lot of times where I maxed out my credit cards with marketing. And those deals ended up coming in. But, I'm sure you could relate. And it's,
man.
You got to start somewhere. And, it's been a roller coaster ever since. But, it's something that I'm so glad that I got into, and I would never change. So.
Love it, man. Absolutely. I have a pretty similar, kind of start to you, a little different, but for the most part, I'm 23, Chris is 24. We're very similar in age, and we both got started in college. And, I think that the big takeaway for some listeners here is that, hey, if you're young, you don't have to wait till you're old to start this. I mean, how old were you when you actually started? 20?
I started when I was 20. I did my first deal 3 months later.
Yeah. So we both did our first deal when we were 20 I was 21. I got started at 20, but it took me a while to get that deal. So guys, if you're young and you're listening to this, it's completely possible. I mean, there are kids I know that are my age or younger that are making six figures a month in this business. And seriously, these, it doesn't really matter how old you are. It just matters about the value you can bring to the market. So Chris obviously got an early start, and now, he's doing a lot bigger deals, a lot bigger deals than most people I know. So Chris, would you mind talking about your current model, kind of what you have going on and how you evolved from wholesaling houses to now the current stuff you're doing?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take a step back. And so I did wholesaling the rest of college. So up until the time I was about 22. So I graduated with an accounting and finance degree that it's just actually sitting on my desk right here, that under a bunch of papers. It's pretty useless for me. I graduated with that, and I worked with a guy in the Quad Cities. So my market is Davenport, Iowa, and the surrounding area there. So it's basically, small blue collar, low middle class area, great rental area. And I've had some good success there so far and hope to continue that. But basically, I started acquiring single family houses when a few months after I graduated. So I found a partner I've known him several years prior, and through our mutual trust, and he kind of believed in me and gave me a shot here, and it started to work out where we were acquiring 5 to 10 houses a month We built up to about 60 houses in the first year. And then, you know, and I was like, you know, the house thing's cool, but you know, what can I do that's bigger than that? You know, and I got really big into multifamily. So my focus right now is on acquiring 100 plus apartment complexes in the Midwest. I've done smaller complexes and I still do. But I'm really looking to syndicate the larger deals and focus on the deals where I can, you know, add the value where other people can't, or where, you know, people just overlook. So specifically in my market, so real estate is obviously very localized. So it's completely market dependent for the most part from a micro scale. And you're looking, I mean, I have deals in my market. For example, the deal that I sold this past November, I bought it November 2017, 20 unit deal out in Davenport, Iowa. It was sitting on the market for 6 or 8 months or something like that before I got it. So I negotiated the deal down over several months, finally put it under contract, got that deal. I think our all-in cash invested was like $900,000. I was able to sell for 1.35 a year later after the value add, after stabilizing the asset. But that deal, I mean, we made over $400,000 profit on it, and that deal was sitting on the market for 6 months. So, I mean, that just goes to show, you know, if you can capitalize, you know, on a certain business plan. So if our plan was to go and renovate the units, do kind of an over-the-top renovation, but you know, nobody else in the marketplace, in my market, is doing that right now. And it seems pretty obvious in the major markets. Like, this is happening everywhere. The big value add plays, the complete reposition of properties. But this property is sitting on the market, you know, and I think it also has something to do with just being in a smaller market, a tertiary market, where you can kind of go in and compete, you know, to deal with the bigger operators or the bigger institutions or anything like that. You can
see stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the smaller investor can really capitalize on opportunities in those smaller markets for sure. And I would suggest, you know, for anybody getting started, that'd be a good place to start, is a smaller market.
Absolutely. So that's a lot. We have a lot to unpack there. So really, started out buying single family homes as rental properties. You got a partner who was your partner, mostly the capital partner. What was his role in acquiring those first 60 doors?
Yeah, he was completely the capital partner.
Okay.
You know, I'm the only operator of the company.
Okay. So he's coming in and he's your partner there. You have some capital now to acquire some of these buildings. And you realize after 60 single family houses, I bet you probably ran into some issues where it was a lot of freaking work, right? You have 60 roofs, 60 boilers.
Absolutely. It was pretty inefficient, I guess, looking back at it, but it was a good experience in terms of learning the construction costs and, you know, dealing with the cities and dealing with contractors and just going through crews and crews of contractors, firing guys, hiring new guys, you know, vetting them and going through the property management process of vetting new tenants and keeping them happy. And, you know, it's just kind of, it was a good overall experience to set the foundation. And from there, I created systems off of that and definitely learned a lot in the process and learned from other people as well, and kind of, you know, bounced off ideas and best practices and kind of built there, and then took those systems and just implemented them. And now I'm able to scale a little bit more to the multifamily, and now, you know, to the 100 plus unit stuff. I just put my first 120 unit deal under contract. So this will be the big.
Man, that's awesome. Is that in the Quad Cities? Is that still in your, okay.
You know, so that'll create a pretty good critical mass to where we can hire a couple of more people to really take on the responsibilities that we're kind of putting in the overtime now of handling. So that will delegate those responsibilities to those team members, to where it frees up a lot of my time, so I can go raise more capital and I can go do more deals.
Sure. Yeah, no, exactly. Freeing up time to do what you want to do best, which is meet with investors and find properties. So real quick, obviously you put it under contract. So just real quick question on that. Are you going to be syndicating that property? Or are you going to be turning around and getting private, you know, keeping the funding in-house and then refinancing the building after it's stabilized and holding it long-term?
Yeah, in that specific deal, I'm looking to raise outside capital from other investors.
Okay. So syndication.
So syndication, yeah. So
cool.
That deal, you know, I've got several people interested in it. It's a solid deal. I mean, just from, since I started, I kind of knew, after the first year, I would say after probably about the spring of 2017, I knew I really wanted to get into multifamily. And so since then, basically, I was building my investor base and kind of looking at potentially, raising capital from other guys and presenting them with these kind of opportunities of value add and kind of the small balance real estate entrepreneur type mindset to where, the providing special opportunities to, people, just everyday people that really don't have access to these type of deals. So it's kind of a good little niche.
Absolutely, man. Totally, totally. So guys, if you're not familiar, guys and girls, if you're not familiar with what a syndication is, it's basically just when you pool together other people's money to go in and take down bigger properties, right? So it's very, it's syndication is in other areas besides real estate. There's TV syndications, radio syndications. It's basically just when you pool together other people's money so you have a lot of capital to then buy bigger properties that you couldn't buy yourself. So that's something that Chris is starting to get really good at here. So before we get into some success tips here, Chris, if you had to give somebody the top 3 things that they need to do to be a good capital raiser, what would you say to that person?
You know what, and I don't want to give really much advice on it because I haven't mastered it by any means. I'm just getting started and really setting, putting together these memorandums, really understanding the full underwriting process, diligence. But in terms of capital raising, it's all about trust. Like that's the thing that if you don't have trust, you're not going to be able to raise money from anybody. And if you don't have the credibility and track record to leverage, it's going to be very hard. So if you're raising capital by yourself, if you're somebody like me, but say you're just starting in syndications and you don't have any kind of track record, you're going to want to partner with somebody with some type of track record who has multifamily experience, or if you're syndicating retail or office or whatever your space is, have some type of track record in that space. That's important, and having some type of credibility. So for me, my credibility is that I can raise capital for the 120 unit deal because I've successfully completed the smaller deals. Like I'm doing a 32 unit deal right now. It was actually in the paper in the Quad Cities on the front page yesterday. And so from that builds a lot of credibility, having kind of a local publication like that. So that was pretty cool, and that's going to help definitely when it comes to capital raising. But really just building a track record based off of, some past projects, whether they be single families or whether they be larger multifamily. You have to have some type of credibility. And even some people build credibility, say they were working for, JLL or CBRE or some type of bigger shop for the past 10 years or 5 years or whatever. They have some underwriting experience. They have some deal analysis experience. And some of those people, even raise capital, they're on the business development side. So that's definitely credibility right there, if you're from a more of a corporate standpoint rather than just starting right at the entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That was good advice, man. I mean, seriously, you got to have credibility. You got to have, a track record of success, right? And if you're not an entrepreneur, if you don't do your own deals, then like Chris said, you can go in and you can, if you work for a firm or you understand how to underwrite an asset, that's credibility alone. And, when people see that you're doing the business on a day-to-day basis, something I do is I document some of the properties I do. I'm not doing multifamily right now. I'm trying to acquire some smaller buildings, but for raising money for flips and stuff that we're doing, I'm going out and I'm documenting deals. I'm talking about, hey, this is a property we bought and sold. These are the title issues. This is how we overcome them. I'm not, I'm just documenting what I did. I'm not reinventing the wheel. And it shows people that, I'm out there and Chris is documenting his projects, his rehabs. We're out there in the weeds every day, and we're just documenting what we're doing, and people are going to see that. And then eventually, they're going to want to get more involved. So just don't be afraid to tell people what you're doing, and just document what you're already doing. And people are going to take a liking to that and a following to that. So Chris, that was really good advice, my friend. So let's pivot in here to some just success tips. You're a young guy. I'm a young guy. Most people don't really invest in real estate in their early 20s. But for some reason, you and I both decided to kind of break that rule and get more involved. So it's always near and dear to my heart talking to someone my age who's in the business. So this is probably more geared towards younger folks listening to this. If you're older and you're listening to this will definitely apply to you. But what are some tips for success, especially as a young entrepreneur? Because a lot of people, especially kids our age, they kind of think we're crazy. I had a podcast interview with Devin, and me and him got started at a young age. And man, when we got started, we couldn't, we just would get criticized, and people thought we were crazy. And so what are some of your best tips for success, especially as a young entrepreneur trying to break away from the pack?
Yeah, I would just say get in the fucking game, so
That's
you
right.
got guys, you got guys talking about it all day. They love seeing Instagram feeds of all the cars and the watches and all this stuff, all the lifestyle stuff.
Yeah.
That's great, but you're not going to have any of that until you get in the game. Like, you can think about it all day. You can read about stuff. I still read books every week. And so I know you're all over these book reports and you're doing the same thing. That's what you got to be successful. But, if you're not in the game, if you're not going out looking at deals, if you're not doing the underwriting, if you're not doing your homework, going out and walking the properties, like, you're never going to get in the game. You're never going to get started, and you're never going to have success. You can give yourself a shot. Even if you screw up a deal, even if you lose money on a deal, like, that experience has a ton of value in terms of what you can learn from it and how you can go back and get the next one.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So that's a pretty actionable tip, and just get in the game, because so many people, we go to these conferences, and the first one that I met you at, all these people were just talking about it. I guarantee you 75% of those people have never done a deal and never will.
No.
But it's just like, and that's the thing, like, even in the markets that we're in, they're very local, and the bigger players in your market, and you have a pretty good idea of who's doing what. You think they're your competition, but most likely they're not working as hard as you on the deal, and you can go out and compete with them, even though you may, especially younger guys or guys who, it's easy to have those limiting beliefs as to what you can accomplish, especially when you're starting out with limited capital, or you don't know anybody else personally yet that's doing deals. There's always guys out there. There's 20-year-olds, there's 18-year-olds I've been making $1 million a year in wholesaling houses.
Seriously, it's true. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's facts. So it's pretty simple. Like, do the work and put the time in, and you'll get the results.
Absolutely, guys. There's not some magic trick that me and Chris have that other people don't have. We're two regular dudes who just, wanted to go out and make it happen. And, I think the big thing is you got to go out and take action. I know you've heard this before if you've listened to a podcast or read a book, but the reason you keep hearing it is because that's the truth, right? So you can't be scared. You're going to make mistakes. Chris and I have made some silly mistakes, and, we learn from them, and we will make more mistakes in the future. And you just got to make sure whenever you're making those mistakes, you learn from them, right? And sometimes we'll make them twice, and that's usually happens on rehabs or stuff like that. But anyway, guys, you got to go out. You got to make it happen. And trust me, you'll learn more from doing one deal than you will in any book. And books will help you. I'm a big reader. Chris is a reader. They'll help kind of shorten the learning curve, but nothing teaches like experience. So especially if you're young, you got to go out there. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up, and you're going to learn a lot too if you just keep pushing forward. So Chris, man, that was great advice. So let's get into probably my favorite part of the show here, coming into the back half of it. So let's talk about your best deal ever and some of the lessons you've learned. I think we kind of maybe alluded to that a little bit earlier, but let's kind of break down your best deal you've ever done, whether it's profitability or cash flow, and let's unpack it and pull some lessons out of it.
Yeah. So I have the mindset to where, like, my next deal that I do is going to be the best deal ever. Like, I want to do bigger. I want to do more. But the best deal that I've ever done so far was that 20 unit that I sold. That's the best exited deal that we've had. There's a few other deals that are similar and that we haven't exited yet, but in terms of realizing cash on a deal, that's probably the biggest one at this point. But right now I'm doing a 32 unit deal that we just took down back in November. That deal, we have, bought it for 1.3. We beat 5 other offers on the highest and best, and we're putting in about 600,000. Probably, most people in the Quad Cities would say I'm over improving the property, but I'm trying to provide the best rental product and the best, the strongest rental product that I can, and affordable luxury for these millennials that probably going to live in this area. And do live in this area, but instead of paying $1,500-$1,600 for a 2-bed, my building's more like $1,000 for a 2-bed. and they're getting a very similar product in terms of quality and amenities. So it's pretty attractive. But this deal will be into for 1.9, and it'll be valued at close to 2.7. So
Wow.
a lot of equity built into the deal once it's completed. It'll have a great cash on cash return, I'm sure, over the 5-year hold period, or whatever we hold it for. I mean, it's going to be a good hold regardless of, if we hold it for 2 years or 10 years. It's going to have a good IRR. So just a really good investment property, very solidly built. It was built back in 1895, actually. It was most recently transitional living, so it was a Salvation Army owned property. And I was able to negotiate so the Salvation Army owned this building. It was a meal site. It was like a clinic for some people. Like homeless people would be in and out of there. But they ended up moving buildings, and they put up this building for sale. So all the units were kind of trashed. Not trash in super distressed terms, but just, trash everywhere. And,
Just
there's a lot of
junky kind of looking building, right? Just a junker.
Yeah. I mean, you put up on those little houses. I saw one of those New York houses that you put up.
Oh, dude. We buy some turkeys, bro. They're just like these things. I don't even go to them anymore, but I see pictures, and even in Texas, some of these houses we get, I can't believe they're still standing, but for some reason we can buy them and flip them quick and make some money on them. So that's right.
But
so
this deal, it'll be the biggest one that we've done, but like I said, yesterday I put under contract as a 120 unit deal, and this deal, quick numbers on it, purchase price $37.5 a unit, so into about $4.5 million. Putting in $2 million of the rehab, and it'll be worth roughly $8 million after it's done.
Damn. Okay.
That's at an 8 cap, which is conservative. But we're taking it from a Class C to a Class B property with a pretty aggressive heavy lift reposition, going in and putting in, I don't know, 16 or 17,000 per unit on average.
So you're doing a good reno on this thing.
Oh yeah, big one. We'll have a very reputable construction team. Whereas you on these smaller deals, you've got guys just kind of ragtag crews, some of them. But you got a lot more regulation by the city, a lot more eyes on you when you're doing the bigger deals. You have to stay by the book, and that's just generally how we run our business, anyways. But especially on these bigger projects, you've got higher dollar amounts. You've got more. You need more credible companies. You need the best guys in your market to do these type of deals.
Totally, man. So this is awesome, man. I'm glad you're sharing some of these bigger deals, especially with some folks who are listening who are doing single family flips. Guys, you can make the pivot to multi. It's completely possible. Chris has done it, and he's 24 years old, and he's crushing it right now. So Chris, it looks to me like there's one of my favorite books that I still study on a weekly basis is Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur by Jim Randall. That is, if you guys are looking for a good real estate book, I have like several copies of that book. It's highlighted up the wazoo, and I'm not kidding. That book alone, just applying a few things from that book have probably made me another like 30 or 40 grand in the past like 2 months, just by tying up properties that I wouldn't have tied up. Or anyway, so Chris, that one building you talked about earlier, the 32 unit building, I think it's the 32 unit building. You basically bought the bill, and he talks about something that basically in the book, it's like buying wholesale and selling retail, and then also buying on one pricing strategy and changing the paradigm of the building and then selling it or leasing it out on a different strategy. So you bought this building that was an old Salvation Army kind of junky, rundown, kind of quasi multifamily. And now you're turning that building from that old kind of nasty, confused use into this beautiful luxury apartment building for students. And that's where, that's the best way to get rich in real estate is you can buy at one paradigm, change the use of the building, change the outlook, the perspective. And then when you go to sell that or refi that, you're going to create yourself a ton of equity regardless. And that's just a fantastic model and takeaway for everyone.
Yeah, no doubt. And Randall, speaks a lot about that in that book. And
I love that book.
One of the best things I like about it is he talks about you just have to be scrappy.
That's it.
If you can never get a hit if you don't step up to the freaking plate.
Yeah.
So, but this deal I actually acquired because I was negotiating it, with my broker, and he was going back to the Salvation Army, and they wanted like put in a couple of different offers, and then went and do highest and best, and we beat out like 5 other guys for it. But I knew when I walked in the building, I knew the value of the building. I was like, wow, shit, this is a really good, great build. I've never really bought a brick building like that before on that scale. So it was exciting to do that and have the architecture being beautiful on the outside, and the inside can just, quick lift and it'll be ready to go. But basically, yeah, I mean, buying that one wholesale and being able to stabilize it and at retail, have a lot higher value. I mean, that's pretty exciting. And also in this deal, negotiated with the city to, we have a tax incentive on this project of, we're doing, because I can't remember exactly what the reasoning is, but basically we're holding its current assessed value for 10 years. So our taxes are going to be, so the building's assessed at like $1 million right now.
Yeah.
Our tax assessment is going to be $1 million for the next 10 years on it.
Oh
so
my God, that's
it's
amazing.
incredible. I mean, that's going to raise the value of the building for that 10-year span, like quite a bit, pretty substantially, actually.
Man, that's insane. So is that because the city really wants more student housing, or like a particular use? Is that why?
Like we're doing, they really want more apartments in that downtown area, and it's kind of right on the fringe. Pretty close to it is a kind of a rough area, so they kind of want that area to be more up and coming as well.
Yeah.
Also, they threw in on top of I didn't know that they were going to do this at all. I just bought the building for what it was. I was going to figure this part out of it later, but they threw in the lot that was just south of it that they owned as well, which will be a perfect parking area, house 60 spaces. And in the future, when this building, when this area is coming up a little bit more, I mean, it's already kind of in the path of progress, but when it's, when there's other buildings going up around it that are better or whatever, I can develop on this site as well. So take down this parking lot, maybe build a parking garage there, maybe build another multifamily development, or, that there's just opportunity there. And that threw on another $250,000 onto our valuation from just them throwing in that land. So it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome, man. That's a sweet little, I guess, cherry on top on that deal, man. So I'm really excited to see how that one goes for you, and keep me updated for sure. So, guys, big takeaway from his best deal: buy wholesale, sell retail. Buy, and this could be applied in single family houses. I mean, if you're buying a property, a single family home at 60 cents on the dollar, you rehab that thing, you maximize the value. You're going to, I mean, if you buy any type of building at 60% of what it's currently worth, force appreciation by renovating it and then resell it, you're going to make a ton of money no matter what the market's doing, because everyone's talking about the market's changing, which it is, especially in the residential game. But you just got to adjust your values. So if the building was worth $200,000, now it's worth $175,000. You just got to buy 60% of $175,000. So guys, buy wholesale, sell retail. So Chris, let's pivot into the worst deal you've done, your biggest, I guess, flop or turkey, whatever you want to call it, and just some lessons that you've learned from it. So hopefully these listeners don't have to make that mistake themselves.
Yeah, so I had a couple single family deals that I've done where stuff came up that kind of threw off the construction budget, but I still have never lost money on a deal. But it was very close. I mean, breaking even, as I say, is losing money because you got to spend the time and effort to do all the work. So if you include time, but like for example, construction budget I had initially at $15,000, went up another 12 when I had to replace all of the sewage and the plumbing lines in the basement. Into the water main, into the middle of the street. So digging up the front yard and having that all redone was just a pain in the ass. Another deal, similar situation with plumbing that if I had a little bit more experience or maybe spent a little bit more time doing the walkthrough or, making inspections on it, I could have avoided it. But, the volume that we were doing and just me running the show was kind of a lot. It's not an excuse, but I mean, it's completely avoidable for sure. But those were a couple of the residential deals. In terms of the multifamily deals, I bought a property completely off of speculation, a 20-unit deal in Rock Island, Illinois, that's really close to the college that I went to. And I guess it wasn't purely speculation. There was a lot of, it was actually an old theater that was repositioned in the 70s to apartment units. So it housed, I think, 19 units. I was going to make it, because there's a huge demand at the college that I went to for luxury apartments. Huge demand. There's nothing like it on campus. I had an architect go, I spent several thousand on an architect to go draw up these plans for the exterior. I went to the city and pitched them the building. They were going to cover all of the tear down costs of the existing building.
Wow.
So I negotiated that deal. I put in about 3 or 4 months of work into this deal. And then I realized the construction numbers were going to be too high. The deal wouldn't really be feasible for a ground up. I'd only be making about a 10% return, which is just too much risk to take on a pro forma basis if you're just, if you're doing a ground up development. Maybe doing a turnkey deal, if I was buying that, I would take 10%, but nothing where taking as much risk as ground up. So I had to completely scrap that deal and keep the building as is. It actually turns out that it's going to cash flow very well. It's going to bring in roughly, it's 20 units we're making it into. We're building out the commercial space into a 2-bedroom unit. They're all 1 beds, the rest of them. It'll be good. It'll be good housing for lower income, and for, even that's not the type of product that we generally go after or we generally invest in. That's what we kind of had to reposition as. But it'll be a great building for that type of individual and that type of asset tenant base. And we're turning a really shitty building into something that's going to be really nice. And that's kind of been the model the whole time. Taking these really distressed buildings and just making them really nice to look at, and really for the people that live there, they're really excited about living there. And that deal will be into for roughly 500,000, maybe 525, and then it'll be valued. It just got appraised as completed at around 800,000.
Wow.
So there's a good spread in it, but it's something that I had my hopes set on being this beautiful development for the college that I went to. I graduated from 2 years prior, and I think it was more. I was just like thinking about, it would be so sick if I would be able to do this development on the campus that I went to and have these students that I went to school with a couple of years ago, some of my fraternity brothers or, some of my football teammates be housed here their senior year. And I was more like kind of had the shiny object syndrome on that, rather than doing the proper underwriting and making sure these construction costs work before I bought the building. When I bought it with no contingencies. I bought it all cash, and it's turned out to be kind of a bitch to do the construction on it. And there's a lot of hoops with the city of Rock Island that we're pushing through right now to get this thing stabilized. But that was a deal, where I kind of got ahead of myself. But definitely learned a ton from that, and I think it's going to be, really valuable lessons that I can really improve on next time. So that's exciting that I'm able to do that, but it's still going to be a good building financially. So that's good, kind of the good news.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I'm glad you kind of shared that, because now it's like, you had the plans of having it be a pretty big development project. Didn't work out that way, but you didn't have to kill the deal completely. You had to just change, kind of pivot and switch your exit strategy, really, keeping it more of that lower end, housing that can definitely still add some value in the marketplace, not the value that you wanted it to add, but, instead of, kicking the file completely, you were just able to kind of pivot, tweak, and move that thing to a different, niche in the marketplace. And that's a great lesson. Sometimes, and that I can give you like another kind of lesson on that too. Sometimes, we'll have properties. I'm not doing a lot of commercial right now. That's what I want to get into. in single family where we have one exit strategy we're thinking is going to work, or we have one, price we think we're going to sell our deal at. And next thing you know, we go up against the market, we go up against reality, and it's just, hey, we're not going to get X amount of dollars for it. So do we have a backup plan? Can we do another exit strategy? Can we take a low offer? Is it still going to make our numbers make sense? So guys, you got to be flexible in this business. You can't be so rigid. You got to be able to pivot and tweak, because the only thing that's going to tell you if you're good or not is the market. And you got to be flexible and adapt. So Chris, before we get into the closing part of the show, what are some of your favorite books that you could recommend to the listeners that can help them either in real estate or entrepreneurship or personal development? Just kind of rattle off a few.
Yeah, you've already mentioned one of them, which is the Confessions of a Real Estate Entrepreneur. I love that book because, it talks about many different ways in real estate to make money. And there are many different ways and opportunities. Like, you can have one strategy and really crush it. The market shifts and you can do another strategy and you can crush it as well. It really just depends on your risk tolerance. And, for people that are more risk averse, you can definitely find the strategies that are like that, like turnkey investments or, stuff that's less risky and less volatile than doing a development or buying a commercial building, or maybe buy a strip mall that's big box tenants, whereas buying something that's more in a tertiary market or something like that with more risk and more tenant risk or whatever. That one, I would say Tools of Titans is one of my favorites by Tim Ferriss.
Yeah, love that book.
To have like I have it back here, and it's just a really good book to it just has a lot of good shit in it. It's very good to have and just kind of thumb through. It's got a lot of good tips. It's all from people that are very successful, and it's just high performance kind of habits. Oh, that's another one of his too, but or that's a different guy actually, but that's a good book. Real estate books, I don't know, I've read so many. I'm just reading one, kind of The Art of Raising Capital. That's a really good one.
I haven't heard of that one. The Art of Raising Capital. I got to get that one.
Capital, and then another one I just read last night. It's like a 100-page PDF. I'll send it to you.
Thanks, bud.
It's called Just Raising Capital. It's called. And this guy raised capital. He raised over $1 billion of capital from family offices, high net worth guys, a bunch of different strategies. But it's just really cool to get kind of the higher level knowledge on stuff like that, because, in my opinion on this, you can really, you can do single family and smaller deals all day and have a great business and have a great lifestyle. My goal is to create really a ton of wealth. I want to hold $1 billion portfolio, and that's what I want to grow. And I want to grow a big company with a property management company. I want to have a big business, and you can't really do that on buying single families, like unless you're Blackstone or a hedge fund.
Some hedge fund, but it's not a feasible model for getting to the major player status, like Sam Zell and some of these huge tycoons. They're not doing single family homes. They're buying big commercial buildings and creating.
Zell actually is. He's from Chicago, and he's
love that guy.
Favorite books as well. I've read it 4 or 5 times. Am I being too subtle? That's a book. Sam Zell is just a huge role model. He's doing a ton of stuff, but he talks about his mistakes he's made, and his several marriages that he's went through, and his struggles in life. And it's a really good book, and it's really really relatable to the average investor, I would imagine. He's got a unique story of him when he started in college. He was going to be a lawyer. And he was starting to buy these large complexes and convinced the guys that owned the buildings to let him manage them while he was in college, because he knew what the college kids wanted, all of that. So he started there and was able to scale up, moved to Chicago from Michigan. Just got a really great story of just acquiring a huge portfolio of multifamily and then doing developments. I think he started in Reno. He had one he did some stuff out west, but just a really great story for a guy who knew his shit and knew like what he wanted to do and didn't care about kind of the social, didn't have limiting beliefs or anything like that. He just went after it. He found a partner and really scaled from there. So it's really, really cool story. But yeah, I mean, those books are really helping me.
Absolutely, man. Those
I
are
know
all
you
good
read
ones.
books all the time, and that's awesome. I mean, I would suggest to read anything you can on real estate. I mean, you can learn so much from just reading that you can avoid a lot of mistakes when you actually go out and do the work. So it's key.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Those books that Chris rattled off, I mean, I can attest to, I think, pretty much all of them, if not most of them. And they will help you. I mean, the key is don't get comfortable reading. You got to make sure you're reading to get an advantage in the marketplace when you're taking action. So don't just read and fantasize about deals. You got to go out, read, and then actually, do what they told you to do and avoid some of the mistakes they
And
taught
you should, I mean, I buy the books so that I can go back and when I first read it, I underline it. But I kind of know in my head, okay, I'm doing this in my life. For example, I'm trying to raise capital for this 120 unit deal. I'm reading a book that I already read, but now it's underlined and I can go to these places. Okay, what do I need to do to raise capital to, in this type of deal? So it kind of goes, go back and refer to these books, and it's just been, it's been great to do that.
Absolutely, yeah. Using them as reference books. Totally, man. Totally.
A lot of people read books and put them down and never use any of them.
Never see them again. It's like, what the hell? Like, yeah.
Like, doesn't make any goddamn sense.
No, it's silly. It's funny. And, the best books that I've read that I've gotten the most value from, I've read them 5+ times. Like, I read Randall's book like once a week, whether it's a chapter or the whole thing. I mean, that book is like, in front of my face the whole time. I watch his YouTube video once a week. I mean, I'm never split the difference. I've listened to that book 15 times. I mean, you got to go deep with the information because that's when you start to memorize it. And like, that stuff will help you, especially if you're negotiating, guys. Never split the difference. I mean, you got to listen to that book and study it. It's an ex-FBI guy basically talking to you about how to psychologically, get into someone's mind, get their motivations out. It's just a great book. Don't have enough time to go into today. So as we wrap this up, Chris, I appreciate everything you've done, man. You've added a ton of value to everyone. So real quick before we part ways here, what are you looking for? How can the listeners help you? What are you looking for? Deals, capital? I mean, anything we can do to help you grow your business.
Yeah. So right now at this point, I'm just looking, for more capital to do the deals. I've done a pretty good job, and I've created systems on sourcing the deals. I can consistently find them. So I'm just always looking for capital to grow the business.
Awesome.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for. And I'm looking for, for partners and for other guys like us, to kind of just bounce ideas off of. And, what I'd really like to do is just kind of grow like a core group. And, like we did back in LA last spring, with just real estate guys, and just guys who are doing deals.
Absolutely. Totally, man. Love it. Yeah. Cool. So guys, if you want to get a hold of Chris and see how you can add value to him, I mean, he's added a ton of value to you guys today. Chris, what would be the best 2 or 3 ways to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing or they want to contribute some way to you?
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Chris J. Salazar. I've got my company website, arsenalcp.com. csalazar@arsenalcp.com is my email.
Awesome. So guys, that's how you get a hold of Chris, his website, Instagram, and email. So Chris, man, I want to thank you for coming on today, man. You've provided a ton of value for everyone, a lot of nuggets, a lot of takeaways, especially for the younger crowd today. So Chris, man, really appreciate your time, and thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, bro, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
See ya.